Awesome.
Well, we should probably get going while I'm alive and kicking here.
Awesome source. I'm going to hand over to Kate Leto, who has a wealth of experience when it comes to project management, coaching, and all the other things. So let me jump off stage, Kate, and I will let you take it away. People, be sure to drop your questions. Kate has a lot to share with you today. Alrighty, I'll see you soon.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Precious. So we're going to hope that everything works now technically. For those of you that are kind of into astrology, we've got a lunar eclipse coming up and a bunch of stuff. So this is all just par for the course. So we'll just ride through it. I'm here to talk to you today about hiring product managers, using product EQ to go beyond culture and skill, which is a book that I released at the end of last year. It was published by Sense and Respond Press. And it talks about hiring product managers with a very different slant. And I'm going to share with you a bit of the content from that book today, not everything, so you still have to go pick it up. But I'm going to share with you 3 steps to change how you think about hiring. And just to give you a little bit of context as to where these recommendations are coming from. So over the past over 20 years now, I've been involved with product management. And I got to know Seedcamp very early on when I was head of product at Moo and their first product manager as well. So that was back in 2008, 2009. And since then, since about 2011, over the past decade, I've been an independent product consultant, coach, and advisor, working with organizations of all shapes and sizes on a variety of product challenges. And from that, one of the main takeaways that I have is that product management itself is very much a practice, right? It's something that we do. It's something that we try. It's something that we put a lot of effort and really practice into. So kind of like how a doctor practices medicine or a lawyer practices law, we have this great toolbox of different frameworks and techniques and tools that we choose from and we select from to try to solve some really complex problems. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but no matter what, it takes a lot of practice. And with that idea of product management as a practice and all of us as practitioners, I think about the product practice as having really 2 dimensions. So there's the technical skills, which is what we do, and there's human skills, which is how we do it. And just to give you a little more context and examples of what I mean by technical skills and human skills, there's a whole list here for you to take a look at. So technical skills, what we do, these are really kind of the essential foundational tools and techniques that we love and we love to talk about in product management. So product roadmap, vision statements, strategy frameworks, OKRs, design sprints, testing, MVPs, multivariate testing, all of these great things that are really essential and really have kind of laid the foundation for our product management practice. But then there's also how we do the work and human skills, things like our influence capabilities, leadership, adaptability, dealing with conflict, emotional intelligence, which is made up of a lot of different competencies, but mostly things like self-awareness and self-management and social awareness and relationship management. All of these things, how we do the work, are just as essential to what we do and our frameworks and our tools and techniques. And when you think about it, the 2 are really interconnected because you can't really do a technical skill like something as essential as build a roadmap without these human skills. So for example, having the self-awareness to be able to raise your hand and say, maybe the thing that I'm pushing for on this roadmap is out of my own best interest and not the best interest of my team or my company or my organization or the product overall. And to have the leadership skills and the influence skills to bring your co-founders and other teammates and investors even along with you on what you think really belongs in this roadmap. So human skills and technical skills are really interconnected. But when I take a look at our product community, our very thriving product community, I see that we really focus on and talk a lot about the technical side of the product practice. You know, we do talk a lot about roadmaps. We talk a lot about MVPs and A/B testing and OKRs, and man, do we love OKRs and figuring out how to do them really well. And again, it's not that these aren't important. They really, really are. But they're only part of the conversation. And so what I do when I'm working with organizations, and what I talk a lot about in my book, is how can we start to actually reframe our narrative on what is product management as a practice, and how do we become successful at it? So I try to help organizations find this balance between technical skills and human skills. And one of the ways that we can do that is taking a look at the people that we have building our products, right? Because our people are really the ones making the decisions about the product. The people are the ones that are bringing it to life and supporting it. And to have the right people, you need to have the right hiring practices. So the way we think about hiring and product management is something that I think is ripe for disruption. And that's where my book actually came from. And a lot of this content flows with that. And one of the reasons I focused on hiring with this kind of trying to productize this idea of human skills and product management is because we often get it wrong, right? And in an organization, a startup organization, especially like the ones that you guys are involved in, it's so important to make really good hiring decisions. When we get it wrong, it's very costly. So on average, when somebody leaves our team, leaves our organization, it can cost about 120 to 200% of that person's annual salary to replace them. And to find somebody new and bring them on board and get them up and running to maximum efficiency, it can take about 13 months. And I remember early days of being involved in startups and coaching startups. And if you even had a 13-month roadmap, you were doing pretty well. So just think about the idea of it taking that long to actually recover from a bad hiring decision. And this last stat I think is the most interesting though. On average, 11% of employees leave an organization. Only 11% of employees leave an organization because they lack technical skills. The vast majority are leaving their organization, their team, because there's something that's not working with the human skill side. Maybe it's the way that they take on feedback. Maybe it's the way they give feedback. Maybe it's the way they handle conflict within the team, or the team itself is handling conflict. That there's something that's misaligned with the human skills side of our product practice. So with that in mind, I have 3 things that I'm going to share, as I mentioned in the beginning, that you can do to actually integrate human skills into your hiring practices. And these are pretty simple changes, really. But let's start with the first one, which is building a role that matters. So when I remember when I was working at Moo many years ago, and I got my very first new headcount. So as head of product, I finally got to hire somebody new. And I remember going and taking a look at the competitors out there and taking a look at best practice product management job descriptions, at least what I thought were best practice job descriptions from Amazon and Google. And I'd see something very much like this, very traditional, very much still what we have today. We'd have must-haves at the top and we'd have nice-to-haves at the bottom. And I'd take a look around and I'd kind of pick and choose a few things that sounded kind of familiar, and I'd basically copy and paste my way to a job description. And I found out in doing research for my book that I wasn't alone. While a survey recently said that, well, 80% of hiring managers feel that job descriptions are super important, actually about 50% of us cut and paste them. So cutting and pasting, kind of putting together a job description without a lot of thought, without a lot of consideration, is becoming habit. And as I said, it usually ends up with something like this: must-haves and nice-to-haves. And must-haves are usually our technical skills, right? Nice-to-haves are our human skills. And this is actually a job description that I found when I was doing research for the book for an e-commerce product manager. And it's very typical, right? It talks about things that you must be really, really good at in order to come in for an interview and to be considered for this job. So in this situation, it's you must have proven work experience in B2C product management. You must have a proven track record of managing an entire product lifecycle and doing it successfully. You must have the proven ability to develop product and marketing strategies and communicate those to executives. And it'd be great if you also had a solid technical background. So just thinking about this for a second, again, this is for an e-commerce product management role. So probably pretty mid-level, right? And you've got to be able to show that you can do all these things from day one. But let's move on to the nice to haves. And the nice to haves, I would say probably 7 out of 10, all nice to have sections in product management job descriptions start with this line. We would love you to be comfortable with ambiguity, right? Remain unfazed when you have to do things that you've never done before. I know that we cut and paste a lot of our job descriptions in our product management world because we all have this line. And I feel like it's kind of laughable now when you see it because it doesn't really have a lot of meaning behind it, but we all think it's really important. And then this job description goes on to say, it'd also be great if you're a natural born leader, because obviously as an e-commerce product manager and at that level, you're going to be a natural born leader. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know a lot of people that come out of the womb, ready to lead, no coaching, no training, no education, no experience, just a natural born leader. It'd be great if you're also anti-fragile and a self-starter with, that's good with detail. So when I look at job descriptions like this, and this is quite representative of what we have in our product world, it makes me realize that we really have focused so much on that cutting and pasting that we've created roles that are actually impossible for people to fill. What we're looking for is really a unicorn. We're not looking for somebody that does exist to fulfill an e-commerce product management role. So when I work with teams, I encourage them to throw out the job description, stop cutting and pasting, and instead take a look at what I've developed called a role canvas. And the role canvas is really, really basic. It's based on 4 seemingly simple questions. The first is, what's the purpose of the role? So this isn't the job title. This is, why does the role exist? Then it goes on to ask for the accountabilities for the role. So what are the goals or the outcome the role's going to be working towards? And then it asks you to consider the human skills and the technical skills that will be essential to meet those accountabilities and be successful in the role. So this is an opportunity to not only answer some of these basic questions, but to actually learn more about human skills as well. One of my first clients that we completed the role canvas together in a workshop, and for human skills, they just wrote down emotional intelligence. And when I asked them what they were really looking for, they couldn't answer the question. So this is a time for you as a leader, as a team working together on this even, to understand what human skills are really essential to this role, what things like leadership actually mean for you, what conflict resolution might mean, influence, on, and really kind of identify those for the role, list them out, prioritize them, and use this role canvas overall as a basis for your job description. I have seen leaders actually sit down and hiring managers and do this on their own, fill out a role canvas, or do it in a workshop with your entire team, with your other co-founders, with other members of the group, maybe even inviting in your investors as well, if that's a relationship that is supportive and helping you with these decisions. But doing it in a virtual workshop setting helps you to really align together on what you're looking for from this role and what you really feel you need from accountabilities to human skills and technical skills sides of the equation. So that's the first thing you can do to start to integrate human skills into your hiring process, is to create a more meaningful role. Throw out the job description, throw out the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, and sit down and try to answer these 4 questions together. The next thing you can do is to prepare meaningful questions for your interview. So basically, now that we have an idea of what you're looking for the role, how can you actually get a good understanding if the person that you're talking to, if the candidate that's come in to speak with you, has these human skills and can bring them into your team and your organization. So I remember when I was back at Moo, and even in years after that, when I had an interview coming up, I'd sit down again on my laptop probably 5 minutes beforehand and do a bit of Google searching for those brain teaser questions, right? Things like, what do you think has more advertising potential in Boston, a flower shop or a funeral home? or design the evacuation plan for the building. And I'd feel so smug going into my interviews because I had these in my back pocket and my poor candidate had absolutely no idea what I was going to throw at them. And after doing this for a while, I began to realize that the only thing I'm really learning from these questions is maybe how the candidate would behave in ambiguity, if they really are comfortable in ambiguity or not. So instead of trying out these brain teaser questions that make you feel good and make the candidate squirm, start asking behavioral-based interview questions. And behavior-based interview questions, again, are very simple questions, not meant to trick, but what they're meant to do is to help you understand how someone might have behaved in a work situation in the past, which helps you understand how they may behave in a similar situation going forward. So the one thing we have to be careful with behavior-based interview questions, though, is that, as we all know, people can change, right? It doesn't always happen overnight, but they can change. So the situation that you're asking someone about and listening to the narrative that they're telling you about these different kind of situations and work happenings in the past, we need to realize they may actually have learned something from them and they may change their behavior going forward. So let me give you an example to give you some more context. So let's say that in your role canvas, you identify conflict resolution as a human skill that really is important for this role. Let's say your team has been going through a lot of conflict and you'd like someone that can help you kind of process it and get through it in a positive way. So you simply ask them, instead of asking about funeral homes and evacuation plans, you ask them, tell me about a time when you suggested something that someone disagreed with you. What did you say? How did you handle it? Again, not meant to trick, but meant to give the candidate an opportunity to share with you a story about when this happened to them in the past. I mean, I know personally, I've probably already had this happen to me 5 times today. So I can tell you very easily how I react when someone disagrees with me. What do I do? Another example, have you ever encountered someone at work who was unreasonable? What did you say? Again, simplistic questions that are meant to help the candidate share with you how they've behaved in the past and how they may behave going forward. Also gives the candidate a chance to actually explain, this is how I handled it, but I really wish I'd handle it this way. And I'm going to do it differently next time. The onus on behavior-based interview questions is really on the interviewer, right? Because it's up to you to probe and ask questions and follow up on the narrative that you're hearing until you can make something like conflict resolution that seems so intangible, tangible. So for example, if they do, or when it comes to conflict, how do they behave? Do they engage or do they walk away? If they do engage, do they try to set everybody up as a winner? They want a winner or a loser. And then taking this kind of information back with you and looking at your role canvas to see like what really is going to work within our team. What do we need to grow and become as a team? And will this person really help us to become that? So that's the second way that you can actually start to integrate human skills into your into your hiring process, is by really focusing some of your questions on behaviors and the behaviors that you're really looking for the role. I've only mentioned 2 questions about conflict resolution, but if you're interested in behavior-based questions and actually bringing them into your interviews, I really encourage you to check out this book called The EQ Interview. The author goes through all of the EQ competencies, and there are many, and proposes questions and explains why it's important to ask them a certain way. So go pick that up. The last thing I'm going to share with you in terms of to help you integrate human skills into your hiring process is this concept of reflecting and responding along the way. So when I start working with organizations on hiring, I ask them to draw out their hiring process for me. And it's usually very much like this. You start with a job description and you end with the offer, right? It's a linear process. And my immediate reaction when I see something like this is, you know, when's the last time in product management anything was a linear process? It doesn't happen. And our hiring process shouldn't be considered that way either. Instead, as I talk about in my book and with clients, is that we need to actually build into this hiring process opportunities to reflect and to learn, right? And to maybe change the way that we're thinking about a role, change the way that we put together a job description, change the interview questions that we're asking. There's a lot, as we all know, especially over the last year, things can change very quickly. And not only do we need to have the systems in place to support our products to change things to change things rapidly, but we also need to be able to change our hiring processes and the way that we're approaching a new role. So I encourage this concept called the calibration meeting, which is something that is kind of like a retro. It's points throughout your plan points throughout your hiring process, where you and the team that is going through the hiring actually comes back together and says, like, all right, how are we doing? It could be a calibration meeting point every 2 weeks, every month, whatever works within your cadence and your cycle. But it's something that is a planned point of retrospection, and a planned point of stepping back and saying, do we have the right role that we're talking about publicly? What do we need to change? Are we asking the right questions? All of these things that are really important to think of as a cycle versus this linear process. And one of the things that we need to actually incorporate more of is something that kind of keeps the learning process going even after the hire is made. And that's what I call a role retro. So 3-6 months after you brought somebody on board, bring everybody back together that was involved in the hiring process and take a look at the role that you started out with and take a look at where you are now. Now, this isn't a time to actually give personal development and feedback. That's something that happens separately. That's something that happens continuously. But this is a point to actually take a look at, how did we do with our role? Did we get it right? What did we miss? And actually giving the person who's come in and taken on this role a chance to say, okay, really what you guys advertised and said you needed is not anything like what I'm doing now. And how can you learn from that? Because the idea is to continually steer towards good hiring decisions. The idea for a role retro actually came from Jack Welch, who was the CEO at GE and very, very passionate about helping his organization create the basis and foundation for good hiring decisions. And he would do something like a role retro, and from that created a metric for individuals and teams called a hiring batting average, which of course is based on the US baseball batting average. But it's the idea of taking hiring seriously and really encouraging ourselves to learn as we go along and continue to steer until we can really start to make some good hiring decisions. So in summary, when it comes to hiring and when we think about the type of people that we need to hire in order to build a balanced product practice within our teams, our organization, we need to take a step back and think about the way that we're putting together a role, the way we're interviewing people for that role, and how we can reflect and respond and continue to learn along the way. But one just last thing I'll leave you with is, if you are going to try to hire for human skills and actually put some of this into place, you have to have it yourself. It's one of those things that if you don't have it, you can't see it in someone else. So hiring actually is an interesting way of building up your own personal development, of actually thinking about your own approach to leadership, your own level of empathy and self-awareness, and actually start to practice these different methods in order to build a team and build a product practice that is balanced, that's based on technical skills and human skills. And that's about it. This is just the beginning of the conversation. I hope you'll check out the book. It's gotten some great reviews from our friends Marty Kagan and Martin Erickson and others. And if there's any way I can help, I'll be sticking around for the founders breakout sessions in a little bit, but feel free to get in touch otherwise.